Dear students, today we are going to study about gametogenesis in human reproduction. See, gametogenesis is the process of formation of gametes in gonads. Gonads are reproductive organs. There are two types of gametogenesis in human beings. In male it is called spermatogenesis and in female it is called oogenesis. Spermatogenesis takes place in the testis and oogenesis takes place in the ovary. Okay. So, first spermatogenesis. The process of formation of sperms, also called spermatozoa in seminiferous tubules of testis, is called spermatogenesis. The process of formation of sperms, also called spermatozoa in seminiferous tubules of testis, is known as spermatogenesis. It takes place in two stages. The first one, formation of spermatids from spermatogonia, and the second stage is spermiogenesis. Spermiogenesis is the process of transformation of spermatids into sperm. So, spermatogenesis is the process of production of sperms, takes place in two stages. They are formation of spermatids and spermiogenesis. Clear? So, the first one, spermatogenesis. Spermatogenesis begins at puberty in human male. Spermatogenesis starts from cells known as spermatogonia or male germ cells. Seminiferous tubule is lined by spermatogonia or male germ cells. The chromosome number of each spermatogonium is 46, that is diploid. Spermatogonia increase in number by mitosis, they increase in number by mitotdivisions, and some of the spermatogonia which are periodically undergoing meiosis, that is reduction division, are called primary spermatocytes. So, spermatogonia which are undergoing meiosis periodically are called primary spermatocytes. The chromosome number of primary spermatocytes also 46, okay, it is diploid. Each primary spermatocyte undergoes meiosis 1 to form two haploid secondary spermatocytes. Each primary spermatocyte which is diploid undergoes meiosis 1 to form two haploid secondary spermatocytes. Primary spermatocytes are diploid, whereas secondary spermatocytes are haploid. Okay, the chromosome number in each secondary spermatocyte is 23. Then each secondary spermatocyte after meiosis 1 completes meiosis 2. So, it results in the formation of spermatids. Okay, spermatids also haploid. So, the stages spermatogonia. Some of the spermatogonia undergoes meiosis are called primary spermatocytes. Primary spermatocytes undergo meiosis 1 to form secondary spermatocytes which are haploid, chromosome number 23 in human beings. Secondary spermatocytes undergo meiosis 2 to form spermatids. That means each primary spermatocytes produce 4 spermatids. Okay. Then after the formation of spermatids, haploid spermatids, spermatids are transformed into spermatozoa. The process of transformation of spermatids into spermatozoa is called spermiogenesis. Okay. So, spermiogenesis is the process of transformation of spermatids into spermatozoa. Okay. After the formation of spermatids, they are transformed into spermatozoa. That process is called spermiogenesis. You can see here, a primary spermatocyte undergoes meiosis 1 to form two secondary spermatocytes, haploid. Then each secondary spermatocyte undergoes meiosis 2 to form two spermatids. Okay. At the end of meiosis, each primary spermatocyte divides into 4 spermatids, also known as sperms. After spermiogenesis, sperm heads become embedded in the Sertoli cells. Sertoli cells are the cells which provide nutrients to the developing sperms. So, the spermatozoa derive nutrients from the Sertoli cells. Then they are released from seminiferous tubules. The sperms are released from the seminiferous tubule by a process called spermation. So, spermation is the process of release of sperms from the seminiferous tubule. See the stages in the development of sperms: spermatogonia, primary spermatocytes, secondary spermatocytes, spermatids develop into spermatozoa. You can see spermatozoa, the head of the spermatozoa embedded in the Sertoli cells to derive nutrients from the Sertoli cells, because Sertoli cells are the cells which provide nutrients to the developing sperms. Next, the hormonal mechanism of spermatogenesis. Spermatogenesis starts at puberty due to the secretion of GnRH, that is gonadotropin releasing hormone secreted by hypothalamus. Gonadotropin releasing hormone acts on pituitary, which stimulates the secretion of two gonadotropins. The gonadotropins are luteinizing hormone, it is also called LH, and follicle stimulating hormone, it is also called FSH. Luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. Luteinizing hormone acts on the Leydig cells. You studied that Leydig cells are the cells present in the interstitial space. Okay. Leydig cells also called interstitial cells. So, Leydig cells secrete hormones called androgens. Androgen stimulate the process of spermatogenesis, that is the process of production of sperms. On the other side, follicle stimulating hormone, that is FSH, it acts on Sertoli cells which stimulate the secretion of some factors, and these factors are required for spermiogenesis. Spermiogenesis is the process of transformation of spermatids into spermatozoa. That is the hormonal mechanism of spermatogenesis. The structure of spermatozoa or sperm. Spermatozoa, the measurement is about 60 mu micrometer or 0.06 millimeter long. Sperm is enveloped by plasma membrane. Sperm consists of mainly three regions. They are head, middle piece and a long tail. A sperm or spermatozoa consists of three regions. They are head, middle piece and a long tail. Okay, the first one, head. Head is oval shaped. It contains nucleus and cytoplasm. The anterior portion of the head contains a cap-like structure known as acrosome. The cap-like structure present at the anterior portion of the head is called acrosome, which is filled with enzymes, and these enzymes help in the process of fertilization. Behind the head, there is a neck. The second part is middle piece. Middle piece composed of an axial filament surrounded by mitochondria and cytoplasm. See, large number of mitochondria are present in the middle piece. These mitochondria produce energy for the sperm motility. The energy for the sperm motility is provided by the mitochondria present in the middle piece. The last portion is tail. There is a long tail. Tail consists of a central axial filament. The sperm moves in fluid medium and female genital tract by the undulating movement of the tail. Okay, the characteristic movement of the tail is called undulating movement. Okay. A healthy human being can ejaculate about 200 to 300 million sperms during a single coitus. Out of this 200 to 300 million sperms, for normal fertility, at least 60% of the sperms must have a normal shape and size, and 40% of them must show vigorous motility. Then only fertilization will take place. Next process is oogenesis. Oogenesis is the process of formation of ovum. The process of formation and maturation of ovum is called oogenesis. It takes place in Graafian follicles present in the ovary. Oogenesis is initiated in embryonic stage when millions of egg mother cells, also called oogonia, are formed within the ovary. No more oogonia are formed and added after birth. The oogonia enter into prophase first of meiosis first and get temporarily arrested. This stage is called a primary oocyte. Okay. The stage of oogonium is called primary oocyte, which enter into meiosis first, that is prophase first of meiosis first and get temporarily arrested. This stage is called primary oocyte. Each primary oocyte is surrounded by a layer of granulosa cells. It is called a primary follicle. A large number of primary follicles degenerate during the phase from birth to puberty. Therefore, at puberty only 60,000 to 80,000 primary follicles are left in each ovary. You can see here the development of primary follicle. You have studied here primary oocyte is covered by a layer of granulosa cells called a primary follicle. Then the primary oocyte is surrounded by many layers of granulosa cells to form secondary follicle and a theca layer also. Secondary follicle is covered by a theca layer. Then secondary follicle transformed into tertiary follicle. Secondary follicle transformed into tertiary follicle. Tertiary follicle is characterized by a fluid filled cavity known as antrum. There is a fluid filled cavity in the tertiary follicle called antrum. Then later tertiary follicle transform into Graafian follicle. And one more structure, tertiary follicle, the theca layer is having outer layer and inner layer. The outer layer is called theca externa and inner layer is called theca interna. So mainly two cat features of tertiary follicle. First one, a fluid filled cavity called antrum, and other one theca layer, that is outer layer. It is differentiated into outer theca externa and inner theca interna. Later tertiary follicle transform into Graafian follicle or mature follicle, that we will study later. So before studying about Graafian follicle, see here the tertiary follicle. You can see a fluid filled cavity called antrum. It contains primary oocyte. Tertiary follicle contains primary oocyte. The primary oocyte within the tertiary follicle grows in size and undergoes first meiotic division. Here the meiotic division is an unequal division, results in the formation of two cells, a large cell and a small cell. The large cell is called secondary oocyte and the small cell is called the first polar body. The secondary oocyte retains the nutrient rich cytoplasm of the primary oocyte. Whereas the first polar body, it is unknown whether the first polar body divides further or degenerate. The tertiary follicle gradually changes into mature follicle or Graafian follicle. That means the tertiary follicle after the cell division, it transforms into the mature follicle or Graafian follicle. Within the Graafian follicle, the secondary oocyte forms a membrane called a zona pellucida. Within the Graafian follicle, secondary oocyte forms a new membrane called zona pellucida. We will study about the function of zona pellucida later during fertilization. Graafian follicle now ruptures to release the secondary oocyte. It is also called ovum. The process of release of ovum from the Graafian follicle is called ovulation. Oogonia, which is diploid, it enters into the oogonium enters into meiosis first, that is prophase first of meiosis and gets temporarily arrested. That stage is called primary oocyte. Primary oocyte completes meiosis 1, then meiosis 2. First meiosis 1, it is an unequal division. It results in the formation of two cells, a large cell called secondary oocyte and a small cell is called the first polar body. See, primary oocyte is diploid, 46 chromosomes, whereas secondary oocyte is haploid, which contains 23 chromosomes. Okay. Later we will study just before fertilization what happens. Secondary oocyte completes meiosis 2. It is also an unequal division. It results in the formation of two cells again, two unequal cells again. They are a large cell called oocyte or ovum and a small cell called second polar body. Okay. That we will study just before fertilization. Okay. This is the overall idea about oogenesis. See the structure of ovum or egg. Okay. It is spherical and non-motile. It is a single cell, haploid cell, which is spherical and non-motile. Its size is about 0.2 mm in diameter. And ovum is having three membranes mainly. The innermost membrane is called plasma membrane. Plasma membrane is also called the oolemma. Outer to the plasma membrane, zona pellucida. You studied that the membrane which is surrounding the secondary oocyte within the tertiary follicle is called zona pellucida. Then the outermost layer known as corona radiata. Outer layer formed of follicle cells. Now we can see the comparison between spermatogenesis and oogenesis. Spermatogenesis occur in testis, whereas oogenesis occur in ovary. Spermatogenesis limited growth phase, whereas oogenesis elaborated growth phase. Spermatogenesis, each primary spermatocyte gives 4 sperms. Okay, that means each spermatogonium it undergoes meiosis to form 4 equal sperms or spermatozoa. Whereas here each primary spermatocyte gives only 1 ovum and the other one was polar body which degenerate later. Then no polar body formation during spermatogenesis, whereas oogenesis polar bodies are formed. Spermatogenesis begins at puberty and extends up to senility, that means it is a stage of sterility due to various reasons in male. Oogenesis begins at embryonic stage but suspends up to the puberty. It ceases around the age of 50. Next one, menstrual cycle. Menstrual cycle can also be called reproductive cycle. It is a cyclic events starting from one menstruation till the next that takes place during reproductive period, from puberty to menopause of a woman's life. Okay. So, menstrual phase can also be called a reproductive phase. During this menstrual phase there are some cyclical events take place. The duration of each menstrual cycle is 28 to 29 days. Menstrual cycle is also seen in other primates. Not only in human beings, other primates, the reproductive cycle in human beings and other primates called a menstrual cycle. Okay. Mainly 2 events taking place during menstrual cycle, one in the ovary called ovarian events and other in the uterus called uterine events. So, events taking place in both simultaneously, ovary as well as uterus. So, the duration of each menstrual cycle is 28 to 29 days. So, the phases of menstrual cycle. There are 4 phases in menstrual cycle. They are menstrual phase, follicular phase, it is also called proliferative phase, ovulatory phase and the last one secretory or luteal phase. First one, menstrual phase. Menstrual phase starts with menstrual flow, that is bleeding. It will last for 3 to 5 days, first 3 to 5 days. Menstrual flow is due to the breakdown of the innermost layer of the uterus called endometrium and blood vessels of the uterus that comes out through vagina. Menstruation occurs if the released ovum is not fertilized. If the ovum is fertilized, there is no menstruation or menstrual flow. Lack of menstruation, that is menstrual flow, indicates the pregnancy. It may also be caused due to various other reasons such as stress, poor health, etc. So, the first phase of the menstrual cycle is menstrual phase. It lasts for 3 to 5 days. The second phase is called a follicular phase or proliferative phase. It starts from the 5th day of the menstrual cycle. It completes within 8 to 12 days. In this phase, gonadotropins such as LH and FSH from pituitary occurs. That is, pituitary gland secretes 2 gonadotropins LH and FSH. So, these gonadotropins acts on the ovary. FSH stimulate the development of primary follicle into mature graphene follicle and also it stimulate the secretion of estrogens by graphene follicle. That means, the hormone secreted by the graphene follicle is estrogen. Estrogens stimulate proliferation of ruptured uterine endometrium and mucous lining of oviduct and vagina, development of secondary sexual characters, suppression of FSH secretion and secretion of LH, that is luteinizing hormone. So, the functions of estrogen are proliferation of ruptured uterine endometrium, that is why this phase is also called a proliferative phase, and mucous lining of the oviduct and vagina. Development of secondary sexual characters, suppression of FSH secretion and secretion of luteinizing hormone, that is LH. Then third phase is ovulatory phase. On the 14th day of the menstrual cycle, that is midday of the menstrual cycle, the secretion of LH and FSH attain a peak level. So, this rapid secretion of LH on the 14th day of the menstrual cycle is called a LH surge. Due to the LH surge, Graafian follicle ruptures and ovum is released. The process of release of ovum is called ovulation. So, ovulation occurs due to LH surge. LH surge is the rapid secretion of LH, luteinizing hormone, takes place on the 14th day of the menstrual cycle. The last phase is secretory phase or luteal phase. After ovulation, Graafian follicle is transformed into a yellow endocrine tissue called corpus luteum. After the ovulation, the ruptured Graafian follicle transform into a yellow colored endocrine tissue called corpus luteum. This corpus luteum secretes a hormone known as progesterone. Corpus luteum acts as an endocrine tissue which secretes a hormone called progesterone. The functions of progesterone: first, endometrium attains maximum vascularity, thickness and softness, thus the uterus gets ready for implantation. And the second one, FSH secretion is inhibited to prevent development of a second ovarian follicle. That means, no more ovarian follicles are developed during the pregnancy. I told you during pregnancy all events of menstrual cycle stop and there is no menstruation. If fertilization does not occur, corpus luteum degenerates, it causes disintegration of endometrium. It leads to the next menstruation and a new cycle. That means, menstrual cycle starts from the first menstruation. The first menstruation in female is called menarche. Menarche is the first menstruation during puberty, and menstrual cycle ceases about at the age of 50. That means, the stopping of menstrual cycle at about 50 years of age is called menopause. So, female is reproductively active between menarche and menopause. Okay. So, what are the overall changes during the menstrual cycle? We studied that there are 4 phases: menstrual phase, follicular phase, also called proliferative phase, ovulatory phase and luteal phase. Then the events, uterine events and ovarian events. Ovarian events include the secretion of hormones such as estrogen and progesterone. Then the various ovarian events, the development of follicles, that is primary follicle develop into mature follicle or Graafian follicle. Then Graafian follicle during the 14th day of the menstrual cycle ruptures and release the ovum. The process is called ovulation. After the rupturing of the Graafian follicle, it transforms into a yellow colored tissue called corpus luteum, an endocrine tissue that releases a hormone called progesterone. The hormones secreted by the pituitary gland are LH and FSH. They are called gonadotropins. LH is luteinizing hormone and FSH is follicle stimulating hormone. Then the changes are, overall changes are change in pituitary hormones such as FSH and LH levels. You can see the rapid secretion of LH on the 14th menstrual cycle, it is called LH surge. Then changes in the ovary, that is ovarian changes include the development of follicles, primary follicle into mature Graafian follicle. Change in the hormones secreted by the ovary such as estrogen and progesterone, and changes in the uterus. That means, first the menstrual flow, then regeneration of uterus will take place due to the proliferation of uterus. Clear? So, that is about the menstrual cycle. Today we studied gametogenesis and menstrual cycle. Thank you.